Parekh sir, you can unmute and start.
Okay. Are you able to hear?
Yeah,
Yes.
very well.
Okay. Good evening, friends. Today's topic is a quiet mind when wisdom dissolves all problems. So this is a title of this program today. This title is not given by me, but I will say a little bit about the quiet mind and wisdom and problems. This mind problems created by the mind, it exists probably only in human beings, birds and animals. They don't have problems created by the mind because their brain is not so much developed as the brain of human being. And when the brain of human being was developed, then we invented language, and we have many experiences throughout the life, and those experiences are stored in the memory somewhere, maybe in the brain. And then because we have developed a language, we have become very good at speaking and communicating through language. And verbal communication is probably a very partial communication. And sometimes it leads to misunderstanding also. When we are very, very articulate and we don't have the ability to listen very, very carefully with a silence. And that is why Krishnaji was asking this question: how do you look? How do you listen? And if we are trying to think while listening, then we cannot listen fully. So problems exist in human beings because of the mind. And actually the mind is not a problem, but when mind becomes very habitual and very mechanical and not aware of what is happening, then many problems come, like fear due to imagination. It may not be actual fear. Like when we hear that somewhere there is a bombing in Mumbai, and then we immediately begin to think, if we know people, if we are attached to people who live in Mumbai, we begin to worry about it. And so uh, problems are created by thinking and feeling when something else other than thinking and feeling, what Krishnaji would call choiceless awareness or intelligence, when it is not awakened, then this thinking and feelings, they create many problems. Through imagination, through going into the past, by going into the future and thinking unnecessarily, and our mind chattering most of the time, and we are losing a lot of energy because of unconscious chattering of the mind. But when this awareness, choiceless awareness or intelligence, is awakened, then our mind slows down. And it is also possible to watch how thinking is arising and how it is creating problems. So if we can slow down our mind and can watch exactly what kind of thoughts and feelings are arising, then in that watching, there are no problems. This mind is a wonderful instrument and it can be used very, very creatively by writing poems or painting and music and dance and all these beautiful things are available, literature, all this is available because our mind is developed. But when the mind goes in the wrong direction and is thinking about oneself, selfish, and me and my ideas, my views against somebody's views, and then we argue. And in that, there is some kind of intellectual satisfaction is there, but it doesn't really change fundamentally our life at the core. So people who are interested in what Krishnaji is saying or what Upanishad or Buddhism, what they are saying, to understand that we need a mind which is very, very attentive, very curious, and very honest and very intense, and not thinking, but while reading something, while listening to Krishnamurti, oh, yes, are you getting? Are you able to hear my voice?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
we are
yes,
able
sir.
to hear you. No problem.
Okay, because it went off on my. Okay,
No, thank
so
you.
so when we become very curious to know about our own mind, how it works, and then we are able to be alone and direct our attention inward, and we begin to observe how our mind works, then there is a direct learning. And I feel that that is the way Krishnaji learned about the human mind, because it is possible for all of us to learn about our own mind in a direct way by observing, not by reading something and then trying to verifying it, not that way, because our mind is going on most of the time. All we need is to sit down quietly and attentively look within and see how these thoughts are unfolding. And generally, most people are not able to sit quietly. They are not curious about what is happening within themselves. So there are, like scientists, they are interested in the universe. They are interested in the atom, in the nucleus. they are interested in everything which is outside the mind. And through the mind, they understand the universe which is outside. But when a person, even a scientist, becomes interested in looking at his own mind and observing how problems are created in the daily life, conflict with people around, fear about the future, fear about what other people will talk about us, fear of darkness, fear of being alone, and anger and violence and all this happens when we are not observing our mind very quietly. Like I read in the newspaper that one American boy, 18 years old, he killed so many children by shooting in a school. What kind of mind that boy, 18 years old, he must have? It must be extremely depressed or very agitated and not really knowing about his own mind. And he has only, he can destroy something very beautiful. Children are so beautiful. And this man, he has no sense of beauty, no sense of innocence. What went wrong in the mind of this young man? And that happens to many, many children. When they grow old, they become very good in solving mathematics problem or physics problem or economic or political problems, the problems which are outside. But when they become curious to look within and see how problems are created right at the source, then there is a real understanding. And then when we read Krishnamurti, we say, yes, what he says is very, very obvious because he says, when there is no thinking, there is no thinker, there is no sense of I. And when there is no sense of I, there is no duality, there is no you. So this is even Advaita and philosophy of Buddhism, they are saying something which is very, very simple if we are very simple and not complicate everything by reading Krishnamurti and thinking and discussing, because this area which we are talking about, the quiet mind, it is a non-verbal looking, and people who are good at non-verbal looking, they can understand very quickly. It doesn't require a scientific, logical mind to understand what Krishnamurti says. Actually, logic comes from this intelligence. So when a person who is aware of what is happening within himself or herself, when he speaks or when she speaks, there will be logic in that. It will come as a byproduct. But logic cannot lead to intelligence. Intellect cannot lead to intelligence, but from intelligence, intellect can come and work effortlessly. So that is why Krishnaji said, an eagle in its flight doesn't leave a mark, the scientist does. That means eagle means a person, a mystic who lives effortlessly, who looks effortlessly and very, very clearly. He listens very clearly, and he doesn't have the sense of I or me. Such a person doesn't get into unnecessary conflict with people. And when such a person gets into the conflict, he knows that it is getting into conflict, and he will stop and he will say, yes, we can stop, there's no need to argue for the long, long period. So wisdom, the word which we have used, is a clear understanding of our own mind. And when we understand our mind clearly, we understand the human mind of all humanity very, very clearly. And then there is a possibility of helping someone by listening in silence and asking the right question. And that is what Krishnaji was doing when many, many people went to Krishnaji and they had some problems. Krishnaji listened to them, and then in the silence, Krishnaji would ask the right question, and then that person will be able, in the presence of Krishnamurti, to look at his own mind. And sometimes people are able to understand what Krishnamurti is saying in one-to-one dialogue. But then, if that momentary understanding in the presence of Krishnamurti is not enough, one needs this as an ongoing, effortless looking at oneself without any motiveless. Because when we have motive, we have a direction, and that direction cannot see the whole. So I consider thinking and feeling is like a two-dimensional surface, and intelligence or awareness is coming out from thinking and feeling and looking from above how thinking and feeling are coming. And in that, there's a direct insight, and that insight is the action which dissolves all problems. So, if a person is interested in dissolving all the problems created by the human mind, by our own mind, we need to come to that kind of intelligence or choiceless awareness which can see how thinking and feelings are unfolding within us. And something is going all the time. And sometimes there is nothing happening. And that then you can say there is a silence. But even if there is no silence, thinking and feelings, they are moving, there is no problem as long as from this thinking, the idea of me has not come. Because when me comes from this thinking, when this thinker comes, then there's a duality starts, and all our psychological problems are because of this duality between thinker and thought. And this is what I read in Krishnamurti's first book, which I read in 1972 or 73. And I was very curious to experiment with this. And I experimented And I found that, yes, as long as there is from the thinking, a thinker has not come, there are no problems. And in direct looking, even the thinking stops. And when the thinking stops, there are no problems, of course, and we can really see everything much more clearly, whether it is looking at a tree or looking at a human being or your friend whom you have known for many, many years, and still it is possible to look at him or her as if looking for the first time. So I found such beauty in Krishnamurti's teachings by experimenting directly. And then I feel that there is no need to read Krishnamurti after we are able to look clearly within ourselves. And what Krishnamurti says seems very, very obvious, very clear. So I have spoken for about 20 minutes. I think that is enough. And any questions, we will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Harshad sir. Thank you very much. Shakti ji, would you please say something? Shakti ji, I am requesting you to say something on the subject. Please unmute and say. Shakti ji.
1 minute.
Okay.
Shakti ji, please unmute.
Yeah. Yes. My voice
Please.
is reaching, sir.
Yeah, very, very good.
Yes.
No problem
Yeah.
with the voice.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. You see this about quiet mind. You know, it is in Krishnamurti's discourse, I think to be aware, to be attentive, that is much more important. And there can be a quiet mind while we are being aware, we are being attentive, or there is still thought process going on. One has to watch it oneself. If one keeps thinking that I am being aware, I am watching, and still there is no quietness of mind, so that demand to be quiet becomes another noise, I think. When we listen to Krishnamurti, usually we are listening quietly. In my case, I can see that in between the mind goes somewhere else, but then it comes back. It's much more easy to be quiet when we are listening to Krishnamurti and when we are reading to Krishnamurti. And I think that is the attraction apart from a learning process, why people become interested in Krishnamurti, Krishnamurti's literature, Krishnamurti's videos, audios. And as Harshad ji said, that experimentation is very important, but for that, a very curious mind is needed, a mind which doesn't have multiple preferences. And this is one of the preference that, well, is also wonderful what Krishnamurti is saying. So let us be involved in it. Because I read once in Krishnamurti, he asked a question: is it possible to be committed to be attentive in relationship. Now, if this can happen really, the life is different. Even in a small measure, one can test it out. For example, when I'm listening to someone in this webinar, one way is to listen so attentively, not concentrating, but to listen attentively. In concentration, there is effort. In attention, there is no effort. There is only willingness, and but what happens is, intermittently it happens that if we are not interested the way someone is talking, or if we are not able to understand it, our mind goes somewhere else. So then one can watch one's reactions, whether mind is going somewhere else. So I think it is important to experiment with Krishnamurti, and also it is important for those people like me who are not deeply in experimentation to keep reading, keep listening to Krishnamurti, not with effort, but with spontaneous interest, because there is one thing he says, which is thinking together. You see, if I am listening to Harshad ji and there is no reactions occurring in my brain while listening to him with interest, then in a way there is thinking together. Thinking, because whatever he is speaking, that is a thought for me, and I am partaking in that. And that partaking is same like you are reading some literature and you are with that person. So Krishnamurti invites us all to think together, to suspend one's own prejudices, one's own reactions, and if the reaction happens, to watch them. So this question of quiet mind, it seems to me, I will tell you my own whatever little experiment personally. Many years ago, it happened just for moments, and I was amazed that the mind was quiet, and it was being noticed that it is quiet, and never happened again, and never before that. But one thing I noticed, I still remember, that in those moments, it was not possible to dislike someone. In those days, there was some problem with a person, and I didn't like him, and there was something, and suddenly I felt that that feeling is absent. That feeling of dvesh bhav or antagonism, it was absent. So surely there is something, but for me it was like I didn't do anything for it. It was like grace, didn't change my life. It doesn't happen that, you see, that something new happened, the same life. But one thing I came to know, that there is a state
Some problem with you, sir?
Shakti ji, your
With
voice is
audio,
not
some
coming.
problem with audio?
we all
Yeah.
have. Those of us I attended in Bombay
Yeah.
and Delhi, audio?
Sir, he has to shut off.
Yes.
Sir, you
Can,
please close your. Okay, sir.
yes.
Okay, right.
Is it coming? The
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
my voice is not
Very,
coming, please tell me
yeah.
because I will stop then.
Yeah,
है ना?
yeah, coming.
Yeah.
Because
Whenever it doesn't come, we will tell you.
yeah. Thank you, sir. So when listening to Krishnamurti, either in his presence or on video, it is, we all have tasted that quietness. But if we make that quietness a motive, then it becomes a noise. You know, once I read in Agatha Christie's autobiography, there is another aspects of quiet mind also. She said that because she wrote novels with, you know, suspense and so many characters, and those of us who have written something, they know that the writers live with those characters. And so she said that her way of relaxing was when she was going to a park, and she would be there for some time, and she'll say, I will not think about anything. Just not think about anything. And she was not talking about spirituality or anything like that. But so it is possible to suspend our thought process for a while. And that is one type of, you know, quiet mind. It is not because unconsciously something is going on. So it is relaxing. But Krishnamurti's message seems to be that an awareness which doesn't have any motive and which is not there to get some results, that is much more important. And this is, at the end, I just wish to share this with you, that even reading Krishnamurti, even listening to Krishnamurti, even whatever little experiment one can do with what one,
Your voice stopped.
Shakti ji, your voice
change
has
one's
stopped.
life, but it makes big difference in the way that you learn to listen more to people. Yeah, you listen more to people. So just that, because I think I will stop here. Yeah, thank you.
Harish ji, please unmute and say. Harish ji. Kamlesh, please see Harish ji talks. Hareshwar Singh.
Harish ji, please unmute yourself.
Well,
After a long time, you are coming.
sir, I'm on a train, and there are lots of commotion, yeah, and hustle and bustle and noise. I'm traveling towards Hyderabad, but I have heard both Harshad ji and Shakti Kumar ji, and all I can say is that my friends inspire me, and they are indirectly telling me, Harish, don't give up. Keep listening to the wise sayings of Krishna ji, Harshad ji, Shakti ji, and everybody. So thank you very much. No questions, sir. Carry on. Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prasad sir, please unmute and say. Prasad sir. Prasad sir, I am requesting you. Please unmute. Now, please.
Sir, quiet mind, for me, it appears to be the most important aspect of Krishnaji's teaching. Our minds are never quiet. This is a fact. We have to engage with something always, either talking or discussing or reading books or watching TVs, whatever. The mind is never quiet. We always chatter. This is a fact of life which we don't acknowledge. Because if we acknowledge, we will cease to chatter. But we don't realize it, and so we keep on chattering. Mostly, it is our past. I have been that, I have been this, I have done that, I have done this, like that. And this chattering ceases only when we eliminate so many things, like our pursuit of pleasure, pursuit of God, our fears. All these things, only then we eliminate them, is it possible to have a certain level of quietness of the mind. It is not easy. Traditionally, we think of, we have so many methods to reach quietness, to silence the mind. But Krishnaji has said all these methods are more or less useless. Because one aspect of the quietness is, who is making the mind quiet? In all our observations, there is an observer. In all our comments, we have an observer. And it is that observer who is our ego. That ego has to be dissolved. The more effort you put in, the more that ego gets strengthened. So the more you make an effort to achieve quietness, the more your ego gets strengthened. And even if you achieve some quietness, it is an artificial quietness. It is not a natural quietness. So, what are we left with? All our effort is useless. Then we have only one method. I mean, it is not a method. We can only be aware of ourselves. Being aware is not a method. It is just being aware, that is all. When the mind becomes quiet through awareness, there is wisdom, there is intelligence, there is affection. And an unquiet mind is always active. It always thinks, I'm losing time. I'm already 80. I have very few years to go. I must somehow make up for lost time. And so I have to use every moment to achieve something. So this activity goes on. That is the quality of an unquiet mind. When there is a quiet mind, activity ceases and action only emerges. That is the result of wisdom coming through quietness. That is how I understand today's topic, sir. Thank you.
Rama Rao ji.
Rama Rao, please unmute.
Sir, I want to share some thoughts on this.
Yeah.
The life flows through this manifestation. When the manifestation itself it works, then there is no quietness at all. The life the energy which sees the manifestation as an entity, then it may chance to be quiet. Thank you. I want to share that much.
Dr. Pradeep Verma, please unmute and say. Dr. Pradeep Verma. Pradeep Verma. Yeah, please go on.
Without lifting hands.
Yeah, not at all. You need not to lift hand.
Without raising hands.
We give lift to someone without raising hand. So please.
Good evening, friends.
Value that.
I'll just read out first two of his sayings. K, we are saying that the brain is conditioned, at least some part of it. That conditioning is brought about through experience. That conditioning is knowledge. It is memory and experience. Knowledge and memory are limited, so thought is limited. We all know about it. We have been functioning within the area of thought. And to discover something new, there has to be at least temporarily or for a period, a state when thought is not in movement, when thought is in abeyance. That was one of his sayings. Then he says, mind is a wholly different dimension which has no contact with thought. Let me explain. He says, that part of the brain which has been functioning as an instrument of thought has been conditioned. And as long as that part of the brain remains in that state, there is no communication, entire communication with the mind. When that conditioning is not, then there is communication with the mind, which is totally on a different dimension. That can communicate with the brain and act using thought. You see? So these, after reading this, I got divided in brain and mind, right? I still don't know, honestly, I don't know whether asking question is in the realm of brain or mind. My question is the relationship between brain and the mind. Sometimes you listen without any interference of the past, as Shakti ji was telling, when listening to a person like Krishnamurti, you automatically listen carefully or attentively, whatever it is. When we don't know, actually, when we don't know, naturally you are in that state when you are without any past. Once you know that I don't know, then naturally the entire past is out because it is not helping you. Now, I have two questions. For whom there were these words? For whom these words, quiet, brain, mind, and their meaning are important. Naturally, I, the conditioned self, When something originates in self, it cannot be insight. Who feels quietness and order and disorder? So these are certain questions, basic questions, still lurking in me. And of course, these things are related to the present moment, the present moment, whether it is empty or whether it is with the past, all the three times, past, present, and future. These things are automatically, they come up with this. So usually, I don't discriminate with, I don't know even what am I using or what is, where from it is coming. The more we discuss these things, it becomes a matter of discussion, but otherwise, you express just like that. This is what my submission is. Thank you very much.
Harshad sir, please come forward and reply.
Okay. Yes, I would like to say that thinking is like a stream, continuous stream is made up of thoughts. When there is a gap between two thoughts, some kind of silence, then that awareness, which is normally hidden under the dense layer of thinking, that awareness has the possibility of coming out in the gap between the two thoughts and come up and look at the thinking clearly. But when there is too much thinking going on, this awareness is suppressed under. So many problems are created by thinking when awareness is remain hidden under. Other thing which I like to say is that silence is very frightening for most people. When there is no thinking, it means there is no I, no me. It's like a psychological death. And since we are so much used to thinking and this sense of I and me, that coming to an end to that process of thinking is very frightening. And so we don't like silence. And so we try to escape from the silence and try to read some book of Krishnamurti or Zen Buddhism and thinking that the truth is there in the words of Krishnamurti. But it is not there. It is, we have to find it ourselves, forgetting everything what Krishnamurti has said, what Buddha has said, what Upanishad has said, and really look at ourselves. And okay. And I think yes, okay, I have finished. Okay.
Shakti ji, would you please like to say something on it? Shakti ji, please bring your mic first. Yeah, now unmute yourself. Modak, please help him.
Yeah,
now you
yeah.
can come forward.
Yeah.
This is got a reference to your dialogue also, which you have given.
My voice is clear.
Yes.
Sir?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment because about this brain and mind, which Pradeep ji referred to. In most of his literature, Krishnamurti has used brain and mind as synonyms. During dialogues with Bohm and perhaps elsewhere also, he has also differentiated between brain and mind. And to my understanding, which is very limited, there the mind is much more, you see, universal. And the brain is much more, individual with racial effects and all that. So that he started using, but most of the time he said brain, mind, he used them as synonyms. Just that I wanted to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Katyani, would you please like to comment something? Katyani, I am requesting you. Please unmute Katyani. No response? Okay.
May I say something?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
No. I was going to say I'm not in a position to talk today.
Okay.
I'm actually on the surgery bed.
All the best for you. All the
I
best for
hope
you.
you understand. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks
Harshad
for
sir,
asking.
please. Harshad sir, please.
Yes. What I understand by brain, that it is a matter, and brain can be studied by the scientist using some apparatus, instruments, and they can record what are the activities happening in which part of the brain due to thinking and feeling. And they can study the brain, but the mind is not a matter. The mind is thinking and feeling and awareness. All three, what I consider to be the part of the mind, and it is not matter. It cannot be put under a microscope and studied. The only way, if we want to study the mind, it is only by looking within we can see how thoughts and feelings are unfolding and how they are affecting our relationship with people around. So mind can be studied by the mind itself, but the brain can be studied by the mind. So mind is more subtle than the brain. And another thing what I like to say is that why it happens that as students, all of us, as we grow older, we lose the real sensitivity to look at everything, what is outside, as well as what is happening within us. And some teachers who are in, say, Krishnamurti schools, if they are very, very curious, then in the daily relationship with students, when there are problems like anger or fear or jealousy, it is possible to sit with students, maybe one individual student or sometimes two or three students, and in a very quiet atmosphere, we can learn about how this problem like anger comes. Because I see students are getting angry, they use very bad language, they are not aware of the kind of language. Even politicians, they don't know what kind of language they are using in the parliament. So they are losing that sense of looking clearly. And this is possible in education. With young children, if there is a right atmosphere and the teacher is very, very passionate, can create certain atmosphere in which there is silence, and in that silence, students, even younger people, they begin to observe their inner world more clearly. And I think it is possible in education. And it is lacking, I feel. It is because our life, even in Krishnamurti schools, have become very, very active with so many activities, too much academics, so many subjects, so many other activities. And once in a while, teachers and students sit down and discuss about what is happening within us. But that is very temporary and it doesn't really create the impact. It needs to be every day, at least for half an hour, sitting quietly and looking within ourselves. We begin to understand much more than reading books for many, many years. So that is why Kabir said, Pothi padi padi jag mua, Pandit hua na
Pandit
koi,
Bhaya na koi,
Pandit bhaya na koi, Dai akshar prem ka,
prem ka
Pade
pade
so
so pandit.
Pandit hoy. So that kind of direct inward looking is necessary to be really free from all these problems. All these problems can be dissolved. Okay, I have said enough. Thank you.
Prasad sir, please unmute and say. Prasad sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, this brain and mind, as I think Shakti ji has said, brain is very personal. My brain, it contains my memories, my conditioning, my upbringing, my education, all these things, my frustrations, all these things are in my brain. And thought emerges from brain. Thought comes from that storehouse of memory and all that. And so the origin is from the brain. Mind, sir, I think it is a little more universal, as somebody has said. And when the brain becomes a little quiet, mind can come into operation. It can utilize the brain content and it can function. But so long as the brain is very virulent, it is like you are saying, somebody was saying this politicians and all that. That is because everybody thinks he has to assert himself. Even school children, they want to assert themselves. That is because everybody thinks he is a separate unit. He has to succeed, he has to fulfill. And most of us think our fulfillment is only at the expense of the other. We have no sense of the entire human consciousness being one. The unity of the all animate and in the poetry of Krishnaji, even the inanimate. That unity, that sense of unity, nobody has. And that is why politicians and as well as school children and even in our relationships, we may talk here, but we forget it immediately when we go out. In our personal relationships, like with the husband and wife and all that, that also we want to assert ourselves. And but I liked the comment of Harshad ji. This we are almost scared of not thinking. If our mind becomes quiet or silent, we think we are losing something. Possibly we are, it is, as somebody said, it is a psychological death and we are scared of facing that psychological death. And when we cease to think, when the mind becomes quiet, we think possibly we are facing psychological death. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Waghmare, please unmute and say. I appreciate your patience. Waghmare, please.
Thank you, thank you. What I want to say on this subject, today's subject, to me it is very, let us make the thing simple. How does the mind or your brain operates? It's take the information from the outside. Whatever he is interested in, he converts it to knowledge. From knowledge, he gets the understanding. How to use that understanding is the wisdom. Say, for example, I see a car. If I am interested in it, then I will get the information about the cars. Then I will select a particular car. That becomes my, and I will get the knowledge about that particular car. Then how I buy it, then if I buy it, then I will get the full understanding of it after usage of it, and where to use it. That is the wisdom, whether I have to use the car or I have to go buy the other vehicle. So similarly, in our lives, in the relationships also, the brain and the mind work in this way. Now, there was a question about the difference between a mind and brain. My understanding is very clear. Brain is limited, it's like a hardware or it's like an instrument. And mind uses it. Mind is in the whole body. Science has also confirmed that mind is in the whole body, and not only in the whole body, but it's universal also. So there are so many morphogenetic fields, theories, and there are so many things which also confirm that mind is actually not limited, whereas brain is limited, and it's a hardware. So we were talking about the wisdom. So we have to also see, one has to understand the structure of the mind. How does it work as far as thoughts are concerned? Thoughts are like a traffic. When they are disorderly, they create problem and one becomes disturbed by them without knowing that he is absorbed in thoughts or he is occupied by the thoughts, etc., etc. So it's like a traffic. But as soon as he becomes aware of that, whether it is by the choiceless awareness or by the first intellectual understanding, intellectual working, and then by the choiceless awareness, by the awareness, because first a man, how does he start? He starts by his intellect only. As far as this teachings of the Krishnamurti are concerned, he starts with the intellect only. And then he goes to the awareness. So first he tries to see what is his thinking, what is going in his mind. Then first he has to understand that the disorderly thoughts are to be reduced. Those who are not related to him, which are creating disturbance or which are from the past memories, he has to look towards them and he has to reduce them. How he will reduce them? There is already a lot of discussion by the choiceless awareness and seeing them, they are automatically get reduced. If he reached to the understanding and wisdom level, he can see that he lives only in the present and all the past is of no use. So by this deeper understanding of this can reduce the past thoughts. So first he has to understand all these things. Then the traffic of when the traffic of the thoughts are reduced, then there is a state when there is he also come to a point where Krishnamurti says there is a silence or there is a quietness. Quietness, I think I'm not very like that word. I like the word silence of the mind. So the mind, he says that the silent mind, which is not absence of noise. What he says is not the absence of noise. Means there are two thoughts. There is a in between the thoughts there is a gap, but that gap is the absence of noise. But who is noticing all these things? This has come to a notice to some entity or something which is background in the background of this. So what he is trying to indicate, as far as my understanding goes, is what is the thing which is noticing thought also and the absence of thought also. Means noise of thought as well as no noise of thought. So when that thing is already in silence and it remains in silence, irrespective of your thoughts or no thoughts. So that background, if it is more and more clear to you, or the ego, then there is a possibility that the effect of the ego, which is the basic effect, it may be reduced. And then he says that you should open your doors and something else or the other dimension may come into the picture. In my views, the simple awareness is just the starting point, and there is a heightened awareness which he mentions. So just by looking at the tree without naming, this is the starting point. But then after that, after the wisdom, there is a possibility that something which is beyond the time and beyond, he has used so many words, immeasurable, eternal, that thing may come into picture, and that is the actual thing and the real thing. If that comes into the picture, then that is real silence, not this simply the quietness of the mind, which we are referring, that absence of thought. So absence of thought is doesn't mean that there should be no noise or of the thought. Absence of noise or the noise, they are the same opposite polarities of the same coin. So one has to understand that who is the entity which is noticing all this. If that state of being, which is also referring as a state of being, if one reach to that state of being, then there is a possibility that he can understand what Krishnamurti is really pointing out. Thank you.
Rajendran, sir. Please unmute Rajendran.
Yes, sir. Only thanks to Dinesh ji. So, to raise my hand. Is it clear, sir? Are you able to listen to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, said wisdom with knowledge. End of knowledge of the wisdom. See the truth. Wisdom. So, if you go accumulate, see, we worship knowledge. One of knowledge.
Your voice is breaking, sir.
I will remove my headphones, sir. Is it now clear, sir?
Yeah, please. Yes,
it is okay.
So, only this knowledge is a barrier, sir. Only when we see the dangers of the knowledge only, that may be beginning of the wisdom. The knowledge, the wisdom is a pathless land. The knowledge is a barrier. Knowledge is a junk. Unless we see the dangers of the knowledge, and we will confuse with the knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge does not lead to wisdom. Only when we are empty, the freedom from knowledge is may be leading to wisdom. I do not know. The man of wisdom never labels himself that he is a man of wisdom. Once we understand this is wisdom, then that is finished. That is not wisdom. Wisdom is unknown things which cannot be explained. So just I want to emphasize, knowledge does not lead to wisdom. It has nothing to do with the wisdom. End of the knowledge may be the beginning of the wisdom. Freedom from knowledge, that freedom is necessary from knowledge. Then only we can just we will be able to see it. Simply going on, knowledge is always incomplete. It is a continuity. We will go on accumulate because we will never be satisfied. We will go on accumulate what, see, 5,000 years old civilization, our Indian civilization. So many sacred books are there. So much of knowledge is there. So whether that knowledge help us to see the truth, because if we go on accumulate the knowledge, what somebody said, that is not going to help us at all. What Krishnaji is told is totally different from all. See, it may be same thing, because the truth does not belong to anyone. What Krishnaji is telling now might have told by so many saints and people who lived over these 5,000 years of our civilization. But what Krishnaji is told is entirely different. He is telling, as Harshad Parekh has told, experiment it, test it. If we accept what Krishnaji told is as a truth, as a because he is a saint, and if we go on add it to that and what Krishnaji told also to our stories of memory, that is also a barrier, that is also a junk. So unless we see the dangers of the knowledge and and free ourselves from the knowledge, then only we may understand what is wisdom. Simply if we by quoting Krishnamurti and interpreting, some people are actually Dinesh Bhai has misinterpreted Krishnamurti's but I cannot say misinterpreting, that is his understanding. We cannot blame him also. So he is having the background of his own knowledge of Sanskrit. He is often quoting Sanskrit. So sorry, I'm not personal, Dinesh Bhai. I have a great respect for you. I'm not personal to you. But that your knowledge of Sanskrit, etc., that becomes a barrier, Dinesh Bhai, to see what Krishnaji is telling. So you are interpreting Krishnaji's teaching on the basis of your accumulated knowledge of the sacred books. See, only when we are free from that any knowledge, what Krishnaji told also, if we take it as a concept knowledge. So why we worship knowledge? Because we want to be a unique person. We want to be outstanding. We want to be smarter. We want to be different than other people. We want to prove something. We want to become something. See, only this, that is why this mind is always chattering, self-occupied, always occupied with oneself. See, we do not know what is a quiet mind. So we will just like blind people see the elephant, we interrupt on our own by touching one part of body, tail, we are telling, oh, this is having some hair, or by seeing the teeth, we are so it is unknown thing. Wisdom is unknown to us. It is nothing to do with now. Thank you.
Anand sir.
Can I say something here, sir?
Waghmare, please don't interfere. Let Anand sir say something and then you can continue. Okay? Anand sir.
I mean, yeah, what I have to say is a quiet mind means I am dead. The me is dead. We may talk about being quiet. Do I observe that we go from one to another? I want to remain quiet. I want silence. I want to resolve all problems. How do I understand what he's saying and what I am interpreting? Now, when you say quiet mind, it is very profound. That means the depth of the me. Every second I'm fighting for it. And I say, I need quiet mind. I go here, I go there, whatever it is, I sit silently and all that. Again, how do I understand the word silence? Krishnamurti says it is a supreme mathematical order. And it's so, very conveniently, I keep talking about silence, how to maintain silence, how to keep silence, etc., etc. I go on my walks and in watch this and watch that. All that can I observe, sir, is what is essential. Like, yes, the previous speaker also said about, we are trying to become more and more knowledgeable. That has nothing to do with wisdom. Again, when it says wisdom dissolves all problems, now, does life exist without problems, sir? What do you mean by dissolve all problems? Very conveniently, I say I should not have problems. What does it mean? Without problem, life does not exist. How does one understand that? Very conveniently, I say I don't want problems. What K is talking about, we need to understand much more than what we are doing right now, sir. Problems are going to be there in life. He's talking about this, how it becomes psychological. Can I look at that is the question. Tomorrow I'm walking on the road, something happens, I land up with an accident, whatever it is, I'm in hospital, I have a lot of problems. I can't say why I'm having problems. I have to see that it does not become psychological. It doesn't mean I have to accept it at the same time. I just gave a crude example. We don't have to go by that example. I'm saying when the problem arises, I don't have to accept it or reject it. It's an understanding of the problem. The moment there's an understanding of the problem, it is not carried over. So these are very essential. All the time I come to my conclusions, I go to one extreme, I go and I say I should not be, the mind should be quiet, the problem should not be there, etc., etc., etc. And I keep quoting and saying how I go about doing that. Like the previous person said, you know, we are acquiring more and more knowledge, nothing to do with wisdom. Over, sir. Thank you.
Waghmare, this is the last time you have to explain whatever you want to do it, then it will close.
Mr. Chidananji, Swami Chidananji will not be there today?
Sir, I am looking after it. Don't ask me this question. I am doing that.
Okay.
Please don't
So
cut
what-
your time.
Okay,
Don't cut your
okay.
time. You reply
Okay,
and then
okay.
it will be finishing.
Okay, what I wanted to say, Mr. Rajendran, I think you have not taken it in the right spirit. When we talk of wisdom, you gather knowledge and then you come to a point where your understanding is that knowledge is limited and knowledge cannot solve all the problems. When even your thoughts is this, when you see from inside that there is a wisdom, then the wisdom arises that thought has got limitation, your knowledge has got limitation, whatever your understanding has got limitation. Then automatically the traffic of the thought gets limited and it gets to the right place. So to that extent, you have to gather whatever you are interested in, you have to gather the knowledge, and then you have to come to a point when you see that knowledge has got the limitation. Till the point you don't see the limitation of the knowledge, your thought will not be limited or it will not restrict itself. So once you have come to that point, then what Krishnamurti says that after wisdom, insight is the daughter of the wisdom. Then there is a possibility that you may get the insight. And that insight you may get from the intelligence, whatever he says, which is unknown. So you may get that insight from your wisdom. And he said that insight is the daughter of the wisdom. So knowledge has got its right place, and it is not useless altogether. It is impediment, yes. Incomplete knowledge or insufficient knowledge is impediment to your growth. That is okay. But once you reach to a point when you clearly see the limitation of it, which Vedanta, many people say the ending of the knowledge. So when you see what knowledge can do and what knowledge cannot do, once you have come to that point, then you may get the freedom from the knowledge as well as the thought also. You may get the freedom from the thought also, because thought will end itself. Thought will understand its own limitations. Now, whether mind understands it, your ego understands it, or whosoever understands it, there will be an understanding, and then there will be wisdom that where thought can go and where thought cannot go. So after that, I think you may understand what JK is saying about the state of being. In that state of being, when there is when the thought is moving in the right place, and then there is a different kind of silence altogether, in which you may get the insight and you may get the other dimension also, the glimpse of that dimension also. Thank you.
Kamlesh, please finish your.
So I only want to correct one thing. That is not the insight. Intelligence is the daughter of wisdom, as JK has said. Dinesh Waghmare ji.
Haan ji. Yes, please.
He has said it is the intelligence is the daughter of wisdom, which comes by seeing truth of what is.
And what about the insight?
Insight does come by observing what is.
So insight is also the wisdom of is also daughter of wisdom.
Insight comes after observation of the what is, and from that comes wisdom, and intelligence is the daughter of wisdom, as he has quoted.
Okay.
Only I want to correct it.
Thank you for the correction.
Thank you very much, Waghmare, for accepting the correction. Very rarely you do that. So let us finish it with this.
So words are having limitations. Word doesn't mean anything. We have to understand the thing behind words.
No, you cannot speak without words.
Communication, one has to use the words, isn't it?
No, just I have kept you silent for some time then once you start, you go on, go on, go on. This is what I see. Now, from my friend Rama Rao Hyderabad is going, so everybody is going. Please end it. Thank you very much, Waghmare.
Thank you, Jain Sahab. I like
Thank
your
you.
comment.
Thanks all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks all, sir.
Thank you, Harshad sir.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you. Thank you.